Alright, let me just start off by saying that when I was planning this episode, the theme was going to be very different. But when I got the story that's supposed to kick things off, that kind of twisted everything. But either way, to kind of give a little bit of context into what exactly this entire episode is about, just think of the very central theme as chasing. Although, if that one doesn't really work out, you can obviously just go with the one that doesn't include the first topic, which is dating. Because the first story that I'm supposed to bring in doesn't have any relation to dating at all, but after that, it's pretty much just about dating. And as far as dating goes, I'll probably say that we tend to look at the initial bits, either the before or at the start, because that's where the entire focus of the stuff that's on this episode is, except for this first story, which I should probably get to. Now, there is a very recent story about how a Serbian member of parliament ended up resigning after being captured watching porn during a discussion on international affairs. Now, normally I tend to defend such cases. You stand up for the guy and you're like, you know what? I kind of feel like this was a little bit off or it wasn't particularly, necessary. But in this guy's particular case, I'm kind of with everyone else that this guy resigning was probably a good thing. Because while I was busy looking at this story, there was a quick snippet of the video of him being captured watching porn on his phone. And when I saw it, much as, they sort of blurred out, the phone screen, I honestly feel like that shit was probably just Europorn and there was nothing international there. So I couldn't defend the dude. Otherwise, if there was some ebony or some interracial shit or some hentai, that's my nigga. And honestly, at that point in time, if I did see that, I'd be defending this guy till kingdom come. Because why would you have someone resign for taking the bedroom's approach to international affairs? Like, honestly, what in the fuck?
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
Okay, let's get a couple of things clear here. The only reason why this dude is in trouble is probably because of where he's located in the world. Like, Europe has this thing where if any leader does just one silly thing, it's like they usually end up resigning. And I've never really understood that shit. Maybe it's an integrity thing. Maybe it's trying to set an example or some shit. But whenever it's some shit that happens in Europe, like, this guy grabbed his maid's ass or some shit. Or, in this case, watching porn or something. The guy immediately resigns. You bring this shit to Africa. Actually, you bring this shit to Kenya. Niggas would never do anything of that sort. I'm over here busy trying to defend, international affairs, blah, blah, blah. But if this shit happened in the Kenyan parliament, what guys would do, instead of calling for the guy's resignation, what guys would do is people on Twitter would probably just band together and they'd go and they'd look for the particular video based off of what it is that they saw on the phone. And I kid you the hell not, Kenyans are amazing investigative journalists. They will find the video. And guess what? They'll make the video trend because now everyone will want to watch it. Guys will comment on whether it was a good video or not. And that shit will be the talk of the town for maybe a week or two, at the most a month. But will this guy really lose his seat? No. Will he be called for any disciplinary actions? No. Nothing will happen. Because at the end of the day, here in Kenya, when you're a leader or you're a politician, if you do some shit, you just keep quiet or you just come out with your shit and you act bold about it. After that, no one ever really bothers you, or the most that'll happen is the guys will just make memes about it. But for the most part, guys won't really do much shit about it, or the most that they can do in the name of speaking sense is asking why it is people are concentrating on shit like that instead of trying to build a nation or some shit. And with that said, I probably shouldn't even be giving it that much attention because I am a Kenyan, and I should probably start the podcast like I normally do in a very nice way, which does not include pornography at all. But in some instances has made ladies feel some type of way whenever they listen to it, because I usually like starting with this tone where I say, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who believes in international affairs, especially interracial porn. Because when you think about it, what can improve relations better than two people from two particularly different countries coming together in a good old-fashioned shag? He's a man who once believed that running your mouth would probably be great for cardio. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show where I get to talk about dating, I get to talk about porn sometimes. Sometimes I might say something that might piss people off, but I normally like to come through with that conclusion. And whether you agree with it or you disagree with it or you feel some type of way that might be different is entirely up to you, but I usually like getting your feedback. And if you do want to give me your feedback, if you do want to suggest new topic ideas or some shit, then the place to send any of those is at Breaktime on Westside on IG or on Facebook, same exact handle. On Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. And if at any point in time you feel like you've forgotten how to reach me, the links to all my socials are usually in the description, and that even includes my own personal socials. So you can get at me and you can give me your feedback, and we can see how to make this podcast and a lot of the social discussions that we have even better. Now, I do want to get into our main topic of today, and there's definitely quite a bit that needs to be spoken about, of which this one's actually something that was asked on a newspaper. Although I will get to that in a little bit because it still involves dating. But before I get into the main topic with the newspaper shit and all that, I want us to talk about cloud chasing for a little bit. And yes, I know this is supposed to be about dating, but it relates to that. Now, over the weekend, while I was busy just, doing my work on a very nice Friday evening, I actually noticed that there was a bit of a trendy photo that was going around on Twitter and also on IG. And it was a screenshot of a certain influencer by the name of Celine Karaoke who had posted up a picture of a receipt. Now, this was all in relation to the fact that some guy had taken her out on a date to propose to her to be his girlfriend, not even his wife, and the bill of the entire thing came down to a grand total of 56,500 Kenya shillings. Now, on the menu, it's not like there were that many things that were ordered, and babes are busy talking about it, and it sort of became like an expectation thing, and guys are willing to do this for babes, but there's regular dudes over here saying that they wouldn't spend money on a babe, blah blah blah. And there was this sort of back and forth argument and talks that people are having about it. And when I saw this bill, when I saw this picture posted up, it actually kind of, I don't want to say pissed me off or annoyed me or anything, but I just kind of felt a bit disappointed, because I can get that there's someone who's willing to spend money of that caliber on their babe, and either it'll have a pinch to their account or it won't. It might even be like a drop in the ocean and shit. But at the end of the day, there's a guy that's willing to do that, and I could call him a simp or not. But my biggest issue is the fact that babes are doing this, and much as it's a clout chase, it actually has issues that affect other babes besides them. Now, of course, there's someone who's gonna be like, if a man is willing to do that for his babe, you should leave him be, blah blah blah. It's their relationship, not theirs. And I get that. Except that this babe took a picture of the receipt and posted it up online. So she pretty much made this shit public, so I might as well continue with my public judgment of it. Now, my issues with this entire thing come down to a couple of issues. Probably about 2 of them, if not 3. And to be very honest, they're actually fairly general. My first issue is, I don't know if this bill was bullshit or if there was more than one person, but this wasn't a table for 2 that actually had this order and came down to this full figure. Because I kid you the fuck not, a 750 milliliter bottle of water was ordered 5 times. Like, I don't know how many dinners people have been on, but I've never seen someone order this much water and it's just 2 people consuming. Now, the most expensive thing was the champagne, of course, but these guys ordered 3 different kinds of meat, 2 different desserts, 3 different kinds of coffee, and all of that, you're saying, was consumed by only 2 people. All right? That either means that this receipt is a bunch of bullshit, or there was at least 3 or 4 people that were seated on that table. And that one probably makes sense, because if it's about 4 people and they're being a little bit free with their eating, then that could probably make sense. But just 2 people? I don't know. Smells like a bunch of bullshit here. Now, my second issue is this, is actually the whole expectation of it when you take a picture and you post it up online, and it makes it seem as though there's guys that are willing to do this day in, day out. Now, don't get me wrong, there's guys that can definitely do this. And the keyword here is can. The number of guys that will definitely do this for their babes on a regular is very, very tiny. And the problem is, there's a growing number of babes that see this and now start to put societal pressure or feel some level of, societal pressure where it's like now they expect something similar from their next guy or from their current guy. And this shit sort of gets to translate itself whenever people get back into the dating market, where they were treated so well by their ex and they used to get all of this lavish treatments, and then now they're moving to their next person, and all of a sudden there's this entire lineup of expectations and shit. Of which actually, now that I think about it, I think this episode was more about expectations than anything. But anyways, sort of besides the point. But all in all, the whole idea of having this expectation that if there's a babe that's going to be treated out and a guy will swipe through a bill of 56,000, then why is you spending 10,000 such a big issue? Like, that's sort of the kind of conversations that'll come up, because whenever a babe gets certain treatment like this, or whenever babes feel like they're on the same level and one of them gets treatment like this, they'll expect something similar from all the guys that they get. And that can actually raise a bunch of problems. But I won't get into that entirely right now. I feel like I should do an entire Raw Zone episode on why I felt like shit like this wasn't particularly good. So I am going to leave this part for here, and I am going to move things on. So on to our main topic of this episode. Now, I was on the internet not too long ago and I stumbled upon the e-newspaper of The Standard, and just as I was reading through a couple of things, I actually stumbled onto one of these relationship type questions that, readers usually send, and then some relationship expert usually responds to it. Now, this particular one was being responded to by a man known as Chris Hart, who is a sort of relationships expert, and it was a woman busy asking about keeping a man. Now I'm gonna read it for you, and then I'll get into what he said and my entire breakdown on it. So the woman says, and I quote, "Hi Chris, my boyfriends are always a lot of fun, but we never seem to get really close. Somehow they just don't become emotionally attached to me, and sooner or later they all stray. So what do I have to do to find a guy who will stick around?" End quote. Now Chris responds, and I quote, "Hi, there are lots of reasons why some guys bond with their girlfriends and become faithful while others don't. You might be choosing dates that's inherently less trustworthy. Big masculine hunks, for example. So choose someone with a little less testosterone next time. Boys brought up without a father also tend to be less faithful than boys brought up by both parents. After that, our chemistry has a lot to do with it. Doing something exciting with your boyfriend releases hormones that trigger feelings of romance, which is why we often get passionate on holidays. And whenever you're intimate or affectionate with someone, bonding hormones are released which link you tighter together. Like, you release oxytocin whenever you're physically intimate, increasing your emotional attachment to your boyfriend, while they produce oxytocin's close relative vasopressin during intimacy. It's often called the male monogamy molecule because it encourages them to grow closer and be more faithful. So figure out what will increase the release of vasopressin in your next boyfriend, because the more he has, the more emotionally attached he'll become to you. Fortunately, the triggers are very simple, so try them all, such as words of affirmation or giving him your undivided attention while doing something together. Anything from a romantic dinner to wandering around the mall. Simple, inexpensive gifts work for many couples, such as clothes or food. So do acts of service like making a cup of tea. But the most powerful trigger is physical touch, holding hands, sitting close, cuddling while you sleep at night. So find which works best for your boyfriend and then do them a lot, because giving them repeated doses of vasopressin will really bond him to you and make him far less likely to stray. All the best, Chris." End quote. Alright, first of all, before I get into anything that I had sort of planned to say, I just need to point this out. Whenever people are busy asking for relationship advice, whether it's on the internet, whether it's on newspaper, people give some of the least amount of information I have ever seen on a problem. Like, people give such minute information, I'm usually left with questions to ask. And this is just something that I noticed from the core article that I did last week. There's this article, there's a couple of others that I've read elsewhere. Like, a lot of people give very, very little information and they think that it's like a one size fits all. And yet, a lot of these things actually require a little bit more information than this. Like, I'd be asking the kind of dudes that she goes out on dates with to kind of describe them in terms of personality or what it is that they talk about or who she is as the kind of person and shit. Like, I'd have a ton of questions before I get into this entire thing. But anyways, unlike the last time, I won't try to fill in any gaps with like an entire storyline or anything, mostly because I feel like the general information here is probably enough to try and form something with. Because I feel like there's not too much that I'll have to break down here in the name of ifs. Now, I just want to make one thing clear. With the current dating market that's there in today's day and age, it's easier to get sex than it is to get a relationship. I just wanted to put that out there for people to kind of get in first and probably internalize, because it might actually end up making up quite a lot of your understanding of relationships today and my entire breakdown of this entire thing. Now, personally speaking, I feel like from what this Chris Hart said, I feel like the first portion probably made the most sense, why he said that there's lots of reasons why some guys bond with their girlfriends and others don't. And the part where he brought up about big masculine men, I don't entirely believe, and then the whole without a father tend to be less faithful is probably true. But you know what? I don't even think he needed to go all that complicated. I don't even think he needed to get into the whole vasopressin and oxytocin thing, because I feel like it's a lot simpler to just kind of break it down why a lot of guys might not be settling down, or why it might be hard to keep a boyfriend for that long, depending on how it is you want to look at it. Now, first of all, I just have to start by going to the easiest reason as to why it is that Shorty isn't able to keep a dude. Because the kind of dudes that she's getting, they might be fun, but they're probably not good long-term people. It's kind of like the whole idea with ain't shit niggas. And you find that a lot of babes will complain, oh, all the niggas out here ain't shit. Oh, like they're shit, they're assholes, they treat babes badly, blah, blah, blah. But if you actually just go and look at her history, you find that she's just been dating ain't shit niggas. And that's actually a problem with a lot of babes, because they end up falling for one particular type and they recurrently date that same type over and over again. They might be in different skin, they might be light, they might be dark, but they just end up dating the same person, the same thing over and over again. And when you kind of get past that, then you can kind of understand that there's some guys that just won't be the settling down type. There's some guys that just won't be the long-term type, or even though they are the long-term type, they might not be the most faithful. And you might either be attracting a bunch of them, or you have a type of guy that you like that is probably that kind of dude. Now, that aside, now let's kind of try and take it away from maybe the guy is an ain't shit nigga and look at it from a guy's point of view. Just the regular guy that will treat a babe nicely, not the ain't shit nigga and so on. When you look at most guys, when it comes to going out on dates and choosing whether to settle down or actually just choosing to get into some sort of commitment with someone, there's usually like 3 main things that can turn off a guy, or at least be the main determinants for a guy. There's how you present yourself in terms of looks, in terms of demeanor and so on. Then there's how you talk, or should I say what you talk about and how you say it. And then there's the attitude that you have, and generally how you'll sort of carry yourself with that attitude. Now, if all 3 of these things are ticked and they come off correct and they come off really, really well, then it's a lot easier for you as a babe to actually get commitment from a guy. And I'm just putting it out there very simply. It's those 3 main things. Now, a lot of times you'll find that if you're a babe who's probably above the age of 23, 24, 25, I tend to think the carrying yourself bit isn't that hard to do, and you guys tend to pull it off pretty well. Now, the other 2 are the ones that tend to be a problem. My goodness, because babes nowadays in this day and age have probably been brainwashed with a lot of boss bitch mentality and love yourself game that is just, it's really gotten into a lot of babes' heads, to the point where they move from a point of underconfidence to a point of overconfidence. And that just messes everything up. And you find a ton of babes with a lot of ego. So when it comes to talking, one, the babe talks like she's the finest thing on the planet. And then there's a certain sense of entitlement that'll come with that ego. And I kid you the hell not, it is actually a thing. It is actually a thing. When it comes to how you talk and the kind of attitude that you have, that is something that can really, really bring you down. Because, for example, when you look at a babe that actually wants to settle down, especially when you look at babes who are above the age of 30, they're very, very intentional, and when they want to settle down, they're really, really into it. You find that they're very upfront with it from the get-go. They're like, I want someone that I can settle down with. I want someone that I can enjoy being with for the long haul. And that is the mindset that a lot of babes that are at that age will sort of carry into how they choose to act and how they choose to behave. So you'll find that if they didn't know how to cook before, that's probably when they'll pick up cooking. If they don't know how to carry themselves a certain way, they might change how they behave and how they go out and the people that they relate with and chill with in relation to that particular goal. Now, you look at a lot of babes nowadays, and I'm not saying that this is an under 30 thing or an over 30 thing, but a lot of them will talk about how they want to settle down with someone, but they're still looking at the superficial shit. A lot of the stuff that you can go and you can throw at her during the honeymoon stage, but it's not like she's looking at the long-term things or even how she'd treat you as a person. Something that guys actually want. Like, I want to know how you'd treat me. Like, would you stay home and make me a sandwich, or would you tell me that I can go and grab my sandwich for myself from the kitchen? Shit like that does affect guys quite a lot. And when you look at the idea of ego and confidence and appreciation and entitlement, you find that it's actually become sort of a thing right now where babes have a ton of ego and a ton of entitlement, and it's being mistaken for confidence and appreciation. Like, they believe that they're confident now and they appreciate themselves more, and yet the reality is there's a bunch of them that have a shit ton of ego, and because of that ego, now they feel that they're entitled to all of this amazing treatment from dudes. Kind of like the whole thing that I was talking about with expectations. And that actually ends up translating very badly, especially when you're sort of trying to have something long-term with someone. Because when you're just thinking about what you want and how it's all about you, and you make it something that's entirely about you, then the guy will probably end up being turned off because he doesn't see where his benefits lie. Because you're just pointing out your benefits with such a dude. You want this guy that can take you out on trips. You want this guy that can treat you out to fine dining. You want this guy that can do this and that for you. You have said nothing about what you'll do for him. And you honestly think that this guy will look at you and be like, you know what? I'd want to spend the rest of my life with this babe, even though she's saying that it's mid-month and she wants to take all of my money. Or even though she's saying that it's Valentine's, so she has to get a bouquet of flowers. Or it's our anniversary and we have to go out of town for the weekend. Like, she's saying all of this shit and she's posting up and she's telling her friends all about this shit. Or maybe even she isn't. But she's saying that she expects all of this treatment. She expects a guy to handle every single bill, and she wouldn't be down to support the dude if he was, down and out. But she believes that as she's saying all of this, and then she expects the dude will be like, you know what? I want to settle down with this babe. Like, come on, bruh. Like, okay, fine. I'm not saying that babes will say all this, or a lot of babes will say the exact same things that I'm saying. But at the end of the day, if you're not showing this guy where his value in being with you lies, then how exactly does you being a long-term mate seem like something that he'd want? Because at the end of the day, if all you're talking about is what you want, and all the attitude that you're showing is that you deserve baby girl treatment, you deserve this princess queen type treatment, and yet you're not showing him what he gets to gain from it, then this guy is gonna take the only gain that's closest to him and probably move with it. And a lot of times that actually ends up being sex. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, sex on the first date is a bad thing or a good thing, but if this guy can bang you, which is usually like the best part of like getting some sort of a situation where you can be intimate with someone, is if this guy can get to that part and he's still not seeing anything of value before he gets there, this dude is just gonna lay pipe and move. Like, no word of a lie. This dude is just gonna lay pipe and then he's gonna move. Fine, he might lay pipe with you a couple more times, but it's literally just a slippery slope of him deciding, okay, I was thinking I might want this babe. Do I still want this babe? No. Do I still want this babe? Maybe. Do I still want this babe? No. Eventually, at some point, dude is like, you know what? I wouldn't mind banging the babe. I wouldn't mind dating the babe, but I wouldn't settle down with the babe, And a lot of guys are usually like that. You sort of really like a chick at first, then at some point you listen to her talk and you listen to her behavior and you watch her demeanor and you're like, this bitch is entitled and I'm not ready for this kind of maintenance. I ain't ready for this shit. And a lot of times they actually just end up dropping off. And at the end of the day, you might wonder what happened, or you might continue saying that guys nowadays don't want to settle down. But the reality of it is, you're just not showing much value as a person that I'd want to spend the rest of my life with. I wouldn't actually bet half of all of my shit that I wouldn't leave you because you don't even seem that bankable of a person. And to kind of conclude all of this, I think a lot of times babes might talk about why it is that they can't get guys that'll settle down with them, and sometimes the issue might actually be the babes themselves. Like, they might actually be fairly shitty to deal with. Like, you can say that all your guys are fun, but if you come in with a bunch of attitude and a bunch of expectations, then of course, if the guy notices that all you are is expectations and there's not much value you're giving, then they'll probably still back out, even though they are genuinely great guys. So just the same way I usually tell guys, go on your whole journey of self-improvement and work on your social skills and, your attitude towards women, I tell babes the same exact thing. If you feel like you're not getting positive results, sometimes you should probably look inward. Look at how you act, check that ego a little bit, do a little bit of soul searching, and maybe you might come out the other side a lot better off. Just don't lie to yourself that you're perfect and there's nothing wrong with you. But also, on the other hand, when I started this whole breakdown of what I think might be the issue, there was a very simple quote that I used. In today's current dating market, it's easier to get sex than it is to get a relationship. So with that in mind, you now have to understand that we're no longer in the days back then when it was easier to get a relationship than sex, where guys were constantly trying to prove themselves and are willing to go above and beyond just to be with a certain particular beautiful woman. In today's day and age, it's actually not that hard to get sex from a babe. So the commitment is something that is harder to get, meaning that the babes have to show more value than just the fact that they're beautiful. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this entire thing, and there might be a different answer to it, so I want your thoughts on this. The DMs are open on Facebook, on IG, it is at Breaktime, on our side, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.